our authority to have a telephone conference during the COVID-19 pandemic. Number one, it has been determined that an in-person meeting is not practical or prudent because of the COVID-19 pandemic and the related peacetime emergency declaration made by Governor Walz in accordance with Minnesota Statute 12. Number two, we have ensured that all members of the body participating in the meeting wherever their physical location can hear one another and can hear all discussion and testimony offered by today's meeting, according to the Minnesota statute. And number three, we have also ensured that members of the public present at the regular meeting location of the body can hear all discussion and testimony and all votes of the members of the body. We have urged the public not to attend this meeting in person because of the COVID-19 pandemic and have ensured that members of the public can view and monitor the meeting remotely in real time by broadcasting the meeting on the Cook County website. Another statute. 4, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we have determined that it may be unfeasible for County Auditor Brady Powers, County Attorney Molly Hicken, County Administrator Rena Rogers, and members of the Board of Commissioners to be physically present at the County Board room at the Cook County Courthouse. 5, all votes will be conducted by roll call, so each member's vote on each issue will be identified and recorded. Would you please join me with the Pledge of Allegiance, and please mute and turn off all audio sources in the background. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. For the sake of the public, I'm going to do a roll call vote of our commissioners. Commissioner DeShaw?
Present.
Please stay here.
I'm here.
Commissioner Dukert? Okay. Commissioner Dukert? Commissioner Mills?
Flag of the United States of America.
Someone turn
Oh,
off.
someone's got it on.
Somebody's got needs to,
One nation, under God.
someone needs to mute. Thank you.
So there's so many thoughts out there.
Commissioner Mills?
Here, over.
Commissioner Corley?
Present. Over.
Okay, do we have our attorney? I'm aware. I know that we have our interim administrator, Rena Rogers, and I'm going to ask if Brady Powers is on.
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Very good. Thank you. So with that, I would just like to make some comments. I'm sure everyone has heard similar comments, but yesterday was sort of a tragic day again, and some trying times, and the fire that we had was really something to behold, I think, for those of us that saw it, and the damage that it's done is going to be very hard to recover from. But, you know, we're a county of heroes. Our firefighters for over 4 hours, you know, the public safety people, law enforcement and so forth came together, worked together, and did the best we can with the situation. And our thoughts are going out to all those that are affected. And thank God no one got hurt. And so we'll go on, but I know that it's been, I got calls last night from all over the state, I'm sure as others. It was just a special place to all of us, and for those that visit all over the Midwest and the world. So thoughts and prayers go up for all those that have been affected so negatively from that. We'll go to the agenda, and I have one adjustment that we will have a Cook County Resolution number 20, continuing the declaration of the state of emergency. I will move that to the first thing, item 4. And Mike Keyport is the one that has prepared that, and so we'll do it right before we go into the emergency management report. So let's just do a roll call to see if you approve the agenda as amended, that was printed, and if you have another one that you would like to bring up, please do so. So Commissioner Corley? Storley, excuse me.
I approve, over.
Okay.
I need to know who made.
Commissioner
We need a
Mills?
motion.
That was, who made the motion?
Yeah, I can make a motion to approve it. Over.
Yeah, I'll come back to that. I'm asking if anyone.
Oh, Roger, I'm
has-
sorry. Yep,
Yeah.
I'm with you.
Okay,
I
thank you.
approve, sure.
Commissioner Dukert?
The only thing I'd like to add is if we could just take a moment of silence in remembrance of Kyler DeShaw's passing over the weekend. That's it. Over.
Okay. Commissioner Shaw?
That looks fine to me.
Okay, and I have none. I added one. So we'll do a roll call. First of all, a motion, and I guess I'll refer back to Commissioner Mills. Would you like to make that motion at this time?
Make a motion as amended. Over.
Okay, and do we have a second?
Support, Storley.
Okay, Starley will go with the support. Roll call vote. Commissioner Shaw?
Aye.
Commissioner Dukert?
Support. Over.
Commissioner Mills?
Commissioner Mills, aye. Over.
Commissioner Starley?
I, over.
Bershheim is aye, over. At this time, we'll have a moment of silence for Tyler, who left us this weekend. It is now time for the public comment period. I know that Interim Administrator Rogers has received some. We all have received some, so we'll, at this time, give the opportunity that they should be read to us. Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, we also have some members of the public here. I don't know if they're here to make public comments.
Oh,
Are you?
thank you. Okay. So let's start with that. Are those members, would they please give an indication that they would like to speak, and we'll have to figure out how to do that with social distancing.
Well, I don't, we're here about our permit that has been recommended to go ahead, but Bill had kind of suggested it would be good for us to be here.
Okay.
I don't know if I have a few things I could add to our application, but I don't know if it's.
Okay, it doesn't sound like you came for a public comment then. Okay.
I'm sorry.
No, that's-
I'm ignorant on the agendas.
All right.
I don't understand, so excuse my ignorance.
That's
please.
okay. All right, I have 4 or 5 letters, and I was asked to read by public that felt they couldn't be here today. This one was dated 3/24/2020. Cook County Commissioners, I sent a letter on March 13th to all commissioners regarding the Day Logan business that operates next door. Due to the response I received from Dukirk, I must not have been clear. The business is, in multiple ways, not consistent with R1 zoning restrictions and conditional use permitting. At a previous
I'm
meeting...
sorry to interrupt. This is Molly Hicken. The video feed is not working. I'm wondering if we want to fix that before continuing with public comment.
It was a minute ago, but let me check. Hang on. Let me check. Nope, it is, Molly.
I'm seeing it.
It is. All right.
I can't see it, and the sheriff just texted me that he can't see it.
Well,
but I'm refreshing.
okay,
All right. Sorry to interrupt.
it's all right. At a previous meeting, the Day Logan business was compared to having a church next door. Perhaps churches are in residential neighborhoods, but we did not buy a home next to a church. If a business was a church, I would be opposed to that also. I am not the only person that would object to having large groups of people next door all summer. This business is greatly lowering the number of potential buyers for my property. The Day Logan business is disrupting my daily use of my personal property. We have checked, and if this business is permitted to continue, it will reduce the value of our property by 20 to 25%. Day and Logan have demonstrated blatant disregard for operating within the hours permitted. Land Services told us that violations would result in not renewing the permit. According to the CUP guidelines, this business should not be allowed to operate on this property. R1 zoning forbids the Day Logan business from operating. The number of people and the traffic they generate are two of the violations. Please correct the situation, reject the application so that I might regain my property value. Janet Effler. A letter dated March 15th, 2020, to the Cook County Commissioners. At the turn of the 19th century, the village of 200 Anishinaabe families lived 1 mile east of Grand Marais, Minnesota. Chippewa City, I'm not going to be able to pronounce this, Nishwawansing, at the edge of the forest, was home to generations of Stacy Lola Droliard's Ojibwe ancestors. Stacy's 30 years of research has once again opened up the issue of exploitation. Chippewa City is also my home now, and like Stacy, I abhor the same arrogant invasion that forced her family to move, yet once again this land is being invaded. Not from white settlers coming by ship, but from those who identify as representing entities from another planet altogether and making quite a profit. A successful community is based on good relationships between neighbors. The key to being a good neighbor is honest, clear, and consistent communications when mutual respect has been carefully established. Trusting one another becomes a working relationship. Up here, we care about our neighbors and make an effort to show it on one level or another. Please support transparent, respectful community relationships when you make your final decision. Since that has not happened, it has been necessary for you to give Day Logan specific guidelines to adhere to while conducting their lucrative business. Documentation shows that they have not followed through on those guidelines. This home in question was purchased in 2013, yet it would seem that they do not actually reside here in Cook County, with the exception of those scheduled summer weekends. In other words, they are only here for business, which is run on this website, ChristineDayOnline.com. As the commissioners, you can responsibly state the financial gains of this permit for us as neighbors and the residents of Grand Marais. Can you responsibly state the financial gains of this permit for us as neighbors and others of Grand Marais? Sincerely, Jan Attridge. A letter from Mary Olson, who's in New York City, is a sister to Jan Attridge. We follow the epidemiology science news reporting only, meaning only experts, epidemiologists' advice and analysis. We refuse to acknowledge the nightly White House media events. The coronavirus is not going to disappear, and it won't disappear by the time potential summertime vacationers could conceivably arrive in Grand Marais. There will hardly be an all clear then. Also, the second wave of the virus is set to return by August or September. That means that Christine Day will be endangering the residents of Grand Marais should she get approval in the first place and then schedule her summer events in the second place. Whenever real testing and results are available, some coronavirus-free people can return to work, but not everyone, including the carriers. Just pay attention to the schedule. COVID-19 is anticipated to return in the early fall because of the relaxed order from staying at home, and people will go and be in contact with one another. There's evidence from WHO about the schedule of the second wave, and it won't go away until there's a vaccine period. The city would be totally nuts to allow Christine Day and her guests to come there this summer. That in itself would make her responsible for an increase in sickness and death that should there be an infected guest that arrived there. Somebody has to think this through because the summer of 2020 will not be normal. Grand Marais cannot treat the summer as normal, no matter what. Grand Marais will suffer economically this summer. It's terrible, I know, but everyone is suffering financial. No rose-colored glass pronouncements from the White House can cover it over. Just offering my logic about the complications of Christine's pending approval, disapproval, and the dangers of her potentially approved summer schedule. Who among the commission is required to think this through intelligently, using the prevailing epidemiology science and with forethought about the protecting the health of Grand Marais residents? Mary Olson. Next is a letter from Marco Good, who lives on 98 Lennell Road. Dear hardworking Cook County Commissioners, I'm writing to express my concern for the disruptive nature of a commercial activity for which you are considering approval near Grand Marais. My understanding is that the neighborhood where the Day Logan Enterprise is located is zoned residential. I'm wondering if it is taxed according to that designation. With the increased scrutiny and assessment of vacation rental property in our county, I'm sure that this sort of lucrative activity conducted by non-residents who own property here and use it only for that purpose ought to be reviewed critically. It doesn't seem like the residents of this neighborhood, which is comfortably removed from the typical upheaval of the town proper, with all of its noisy commercial summertime activity, should have its peaceful summer days and evenings disturbed in this way. Thank you all for considering my perspective and that of my friends in the Old Shore neighborhood. And last, a letter that I received this morning. Dear Cook County Commissioners, please do not allow this high-traffic business to continue in this formerly quiet R1 zone neighborhood. Christine Day said that the Planning Commission meeting, that her retreats are just quiet meditation. I can't say how her retreats are, but the one I heard was not quiet. Last summer, I visited my sister, whose home is next door, during one of these retreats. There were many, many cars pulling in, driving around, car door after car door slamming, and parking. After parking, the people walked down to the beach. If you haven't been out to look at the site, the garage meeting room is right next to the property line. The 25 participants walked between the garage and my sister's house to get to the beach, visiting and chatting as they went. We could hear them chatting while they congregated on the beach too. Later, there was wailing and chanting. First it was one voice, then it was quiet, then more and more voices coming from the beach. The sounds overshadowed what we were doing inside the house. It's difficult to describe what an impact it made. Kristen and Janet aren't the type to complain about neighbors. They've always got along with and befriended people who live near them. The only reason they object to the Day Logan retreats is the disruption in their lives. This is not like one of your neighbors having company over. It isn't a small home business, which would be more like 4 or 5 participants. This is a high-traffic business that strongly impacts the residents around it. The onus should not be on the neighbors to have to prove that the incoming business is causing such disquiet, nor should it be on them to have to take their time to write letters or show up at meetings to maintain the quiet that should be expected in an established R1 neighborhood. Please don't allow this high-traffic business to continue in this formerly quiet R1 zone neighborhood. Thank you. Jennifer Fenwick, 2963 County Road 7, Grand Marais. That's what I received. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Will I get a chance to answer some of this, some of these?
I'm sorry, did someone...
Mr. Chair, Ms. Day is asking if she has a chance to respond in public comments.
She has I think she has the right to make a public comment. That's how I'll rule on it, unless Attorney Hicken, you think differently.
I think the period for public comment is still open, and if somebody is present wishing to be heard, they should be able to.
I agree. Okay. So she will need to come to the mic so we can hear her, I guess. Is there a mic available?
There is. I have one set up, and you'll need to sign in. And how?
I'm going to time.
Okay.
I'm going to time it to 5 minutes or thereabouts.
So good morning. I have to say first that Grand Marais is our home and we live here. We do not have another home. We're homesteaded here, and there's a lot of stories going on, and a lot of them are just stories that have been made up by our neighbours who don't want us to conduct this meditation retreat. So just for example, they say there's drumming and chanting. There is none. And there never has been in any of the retreats we've had. So I think it's important just to understand that that our neighbours don't want us to be doing what we're doing. I get that. We have tried to call them, they hang up on us, we've invited them over, by email, they reject it. We have made many attempts to talk with them, and they, over the last couple of years, will not have anything to do with us. So that needs to be stated too, that we've done what we can. We've also thought about, when we talk about the traffic, we're talking about 8 to 9 cars. Everyone carpools in. We've looked at our land, and came up with an idea of having the cars parked away from their property line, and we can do some of that. And we're also looking at, and absolutely we won't be running these programs if the coronavirus is active up here. That's not happening. We have people signed in for this program for this summer, and they all know that the odds are it's probably going to be cancelled. So there's absolutely no way we wouldn't honour that. We're all for safety and for keeping everybody safe. So I just wanted to state that, and also say this year we do have those 6 weekends planned in the summer months. We're looking for the following year, if we get the permit, to move them to slightly off-season, being at the end of August and September, and early May, late May, early June, change the way they're run so that we're not taking up a lot of the summer months to support our neighbours, and also to support the community on another level, bringing income in the slightly off-season. So that's all I want to say. So we're hoping you'll consider our permit, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is that the end of the comments from the courthouse?
Any other comments?
No, that's
Okay.
fine. Thank you.
That's the end, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to the consent agenda item. I'll do a roll call on if you would like to have anyone polled or discuss one further before we go to a motion to approve the consent agenda. So we'll start with Commissioner Mills.
I have nothing to poll over.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Storley?
I approve everything that's on there. Over.
Okay. Commissioner DeShaw?
Oh, it looks good.
Commissioner Dukert?
I have no questions.
And Chair Bershon has none. So then I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda. Would you state your name, please, and then make the motion?
Commissioner Mills, I'll make the motion to approve the consent agenda over.
Do we have a second?
Support.
Okay. Commissioner DeShaw, support. Roll call vote. Commissioner Storley?
Aye. Over.
Commissioner Mills?
Commissioner Mills, aye, over.
Commissioner DeShaw?
Aye.
Commissioner Dukert?
Aye, over.
And Bershon, aye, over. It passes. Okay, we'll go now to the emergency declaration. And I'm going to turn that over to Mike Keyport. If you have any comments on that, and if you would like to read it, or I can read it. Either way, it's your preference.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. As you know, we did do the local declaration of a state of emergency on March 17, 2020. Per state statute, that any local state declaration is only good for 30 days. You may have seen on the news the governor of Minnesota himself extended the state state of emergency till May 13th. So I'm just asking the board today that to approve this resolution to extend our declaration of state of emergency for 30 days.
Okay. I think as far as protocol, I will read the state of emergency, and then we'll have comments on it. This is Cook County Resolution Number 20, continuing the declaration of a state of emergency. Whereas COVID-19 is a viral respiratory illness caused by a coronavirus that has not been found in people before. Whereas COVID-19 is an illness which is potentially fatal to older adults and people who have serious chronic medical conditions like heart disease, diabetes, and lung disease. Whereas coronavirus is known to spread rapidly among populations without preventative measures and rapid action by local authorities. Whereas Cook County has a higher than average population of older adults, a higher than average level of movement across its borders related to Cook County's tourism industry and its seasonal population. Whereas preventing the rapid spread of coronavirus and related fatalities among the Cook County population and its visitors requires swift action by the Cook County Board of Commissioners, its staff, and Cook County public officials. Whereas Cook County has already been required to purchase and will continue to purchase necessary equipment, software, and other technological resources to allow for teleworking and the provision of essential services to its citizens and visitors without increasing the risk of transmission of the coronavirus. Whereas Cook County anticipates being required to expend additional financial resources to prevent the spread of coronavirus and make related communications, and for providing essential services to individuals in quarantine and isolation as a result of exposure to coronavirus or testing positive for the virus or COVID-19 illness. Whereas on March 17, 2020, at the request of the Cook County Emergency Manager and related to the foregoing circumstances, the Cook County Board of Commissioners declared Cook County in a state of emergency during the COVID outbreak in Cook County of March 2020. Whereas on April 13, 2020, the Cook County Emergency Manager requested that the Cook County Board of Commissioners continue the local declaration of a state of emergency given the COVID-19 outbreak in the state of Minnesota was ongoing. Numbers of new positive cases across in the state had recently drastically increased, and the peak for positive cases in the state of Minnesota was at best several weeks in the future. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Cook County Board of Commissioners hereby continues the local declaration of a state of emergency for conditions resulting from the COVID-19 outbreak for an additional 30 days. Adopted by the Cook County Board of Commissioners this 14th day of April 2020. And then we will go into a roll call on any comments that you may have before I call for a motion. Comments, Commissioner Shaw?
No comments.
Commissioner Ducour?
No comments, over.
Commissioner Mills?
Commissioner Mills has no comment, over.
Commissioner Storley?
No comment other than I appreciate being on top of this so that if it would have run out and we didn't know about it, we're good to go for another 30 days. So thank you.
Thank you. Very good, thank you. Commissioner Bersheim has no comment, so I would entertain a motion. Would you please state your name and state your motion?
Commissioner Disha supports.
Okay. And do I have a second?
Commissioner Mills, second, over.
Okay, we have a Commissioner Mills, a second. Roll call vote. Commissioner Storley?
Aye, over.
Commissioner Mills?
Commissioner Mills, aye, over.
Commissioner Ducour?
Aye.
Commissioner Ducour?
Aye. Over.
Bershheim is aye. Unanimous? Thank you. So now we'll go into our reports, and I guess, again, thanks so much to our emergency management co-leaders, co-commanders, for all the work that you've been doing during this time. So who would like to start with an update for the board and the public? Grace or Mike?
Either way, if I can take it away. So I did email my. Mike, do you want to?
No, go ahead, Grace. Take her.
Okay. Okay. So I did send my notes out kind of at the 11th hour to all the commissioners. So I have no problem with those being included in the notes or the packet. I'll start with the case count as of yesterday. There were 1,650 lab-confirmed cases of COVID-19, 842 of which no longer needed to isolate, and 70 related deaths in the state of Minnesota. 1 week ago, there were 935 lab-confirmed cases of COVID-19, 750 of which no longer needed to isolate, and 30 related deaths. And 1 month ago, on March 13th, there were just 14 total lab-confirmed positive cases in the state. There are still limitations with testing, so these continue to be low estimates. And there are still no lab-confirmed cases of COVID-19 in Cook or Lake counties. I have a few updates from the EOC and what we've been working on this past week. One theme that I want to make sure the commissioners are aware of is that there have been an increasing number of local businesses reaching out with questions related to health and safety in the context of the summer season. There are still many unknowns with regard to state-level guidance after the stay-at-home order expires in May. That said, the EOC wants to be at the table as these conversations unfold regarding what will be a very delicate balance between physical and economic health in our community. For now, a project I am working on is getting a set of tools for local businesses that combine MDH and CDC guidance as it relates to questions that might arise in the coming weeks and months related to COVID-19 from the perspective of employers. We, in the area of isolation and quarantine support, we continue to work toward agreements for providing shelter as an essential service in the case that an individual were to need that support to be able to maintain isolation or quarantine status. We are continuing to coordinate volunteers to take and pack grocery orders and also to deliver groceries in order to support our local stores in being able to provide food safely for our community. The EOC is coordinating distributing paper flyers with basic information on COVID-19 from the CDC, as well as a flyer from Care Partners that has tips for older adults to stay safe in the context of COVID-19. The reason for the paper flyers is that we recognize that not all people in the community are getting information on the internet or on the radio, and we want to make sure that we're not leaving anyone out. So these flyers will be distributed in partnership with those who are working in the community, so with the Hub, Care Partners, through PHHS, social workers, as well as our in-home support program. We also put these flyers at post office and in West End businesses, and we have the goal of continuing to distribute them throughout the entire county. Our donations process is running smoothly. We have updated instructions and a video tutorial on how to make cloth masks on the Hub site. We've estimated a need of 1,500 masks to distribute first to our healthcare partners as a means of source control for asymptomatic patients, and then also to other partners in need throughout the community. There continues to be a shortage of personal protective equipment, or PPE, across the country. This does affect our response efforts locally. In addition to our healthcare partners seeking to source and purchase PPE, We also ask for donations through the EOC Donation Center. On a related note, local resident Bob Pranis has donated 40 face shields to the EOC, which he made on his 3D printer, and these can be used as PPE by our medical partners. The North Shore Healthcare Foundation organized a campaign to accept monetary donations for medical response efforts related to COVID-19 throughout our county. The foundation is prepared to match up to $20,000 in donations. Dr. Terrell, who is the medical director at Sawtooth Mountain Clinic and for the ambulance service, did a Zoom presentation on infectious disease control and COVID-19 that was made available to all first responder units throughout the county. This happened last week on April 8th, and 86 responders attended the presentation. The notes from that presentation have been made available to all responders throughout the county. Behavioral health response continues to be a critical area of focus within the EOC, as there's a widespread need to provide support and coping tools that address both the individual and community level trauma that COVID-19 has generated. Matthew Baxley and Grace Bouchard will be presenting on this topic, on their vision, and on the efforts they've taken to date at today's local mental health advisory council meeting. The county's COVID-19 response hub site continues to generate between 300 and 500 hits a day and is serving as an important source of authoritative news for local residents. Last week on Tuesday, we convened our local emergency preparedness group via Skype, and we will continue to meet remotely every other week throughout the incident in order to maintain a broader community-wide situational awareness and learn how to better support one another throughout our response. And finally, WTIP continues its Monday, Wednesday, Friday rotation of COVID-19 related interviews. I was on yesterday. My slot is Mondays. The clinic continues to report on Wednesdays, and North Shore Health reports on Fridays. And that is all I have for the week.
Okay, good. Thank you so much for what you do. And we'll do a roll call if there's any questions. This is a discussion only, so I'll just start with Commissioner Storley. Any questions or comments in regard to her presentation to us this morning?
Thank you, Grace, for always updating us to the maximum for what we need to know. So thanks again. Over.
Thank you. Commissioner DeShaw?
No questions. Thanks, Grace. It was a little more detailed than last time, and I appreciate that.
Thank you. Commissioner Duker?
Great. Thank you very much. Thanks for your quick response when I have questions via email and working with all of the partners. Just a reminder to those watching our meeting who will be listening in, the information that's available is not only just for locals, but the information is available to anyone visiting us. And as always, your safety is our number one priority. I'm still receiving emails and comments from people asking why the county board doesn't like tourists and visitors, and all of this is out of love for you. We do really appreciate you and want you to come back, but we want to be able to see you healthy and alive. So thank you, Grace, for everything you're doing and all of the ways you're trying to get that information out so that people know what's going on in our community. Over.
Thank you. Yes, from my comments, I think personally I've benefited from the volunteer work, and it's just an indirect thanks to you, Grace and Mike. I was the recipient of a mask. I don't sew, so I want to thank Donna Lumpy for making a mask for me, and I'm going to wear it when I can. So with that, we'll turn it over to our Emergency Management Director, Keyport, for an update from you. Again, thanks for all you do, Mike.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, Cook County community members. Jim Wiener and myself, as co-emergency operations center managers, are attempting our best to get into a rhythm and a routine in the emergency operations center, and due to my normal duties that I have to take care of, and of course we had the unfortunate incident over the weekend, and then yesterday's very disastrous fire in downtown Grand Marais here, and it does. Jim is a first responder, so it displaces us temporarily. So to get back into the emergency operations center routine here again, and following up with the fire and after action reports and different things. So it's definitely been a busy time. I'm continuing to meet from an emergency management standpoint with my regional partners. We chose a week or after I spoke to you last week to reduce our regional meetings. We were meeting on weekends even. We chose to reduce that to Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays because we are all kind of getting meetinged out, if you will, for lack of a better word. I know there's many of us in that situation. But it's very good updates. We do have something in place. We've had in place the emergency management directors of the region here, which is 11 counties, 5 tribes, and the city of Duluth. We use St. Louis County's Everbridge notification system. It's quite similar to the Code Red system we have here in Cook County. But in a moment's notice, we can send out an emergency request to have an emergency meeting. So we're a close-knit group and can meet at any time. Continue to meet with the state Tuesdays and Thursdays. I think the state is struggling like the rest of us. The federal government is pumping out so many funding sources for small businesses. There's grant opportunities, public assistance, of course, and at this point I'm being instructed to report directly to FEMA instead of going through the state for reimbursement for the cost that we may incur here in Cook County. We're meeting at 1 today. Hopefully I'll get a little better scope on what they're asking of us as emergency management directors. Lake County, we do have some personal protective equipment sources out there right at this time. I'm worried that these will go away as time goes on here. There's a company out of Duluth, Lake County Emergency Management Director B.J. Kolstad ordered 5,000 surgical masks. She's willing to share them with Cook County at a cost, of course. I can get 1,500 of them from her. I would like to do that. I can also get 10 gallons of alcohol-based cleaning disinfectant, if you will, at a cost, of course. And her and I spoke yesterday. I may order some. They also make a disposable gown for $3.50 each. I would like to acquire some of them and then share back with Lake County. These bigger companies put quite a limit that you have to order. For an N95 mask, you have to order a minimum of 10,000. So if we can share with Lake County, it reduces our cost, even though these are reimbursable costs. So that's just one thing I'm working on, and hope to get some stuff coming our way here this week yet. Kind of switching gears here, I would like to remind us as county employees and county commissioners in our community that be cautious not to get tunnel vision, if you will, regarding the COVID response, when this week, the 13th through the 17th, is the Fear Weather Awareness Week. The Department of Public Safety of Minnesota and the National Weather Service team up each year to make the citizens of the state and our local jurisdictions aware of severe weather, and I think we can't forget about that. There will be a tornado drill at 1:45 on Thursday. They typically do that twice. They chose just to do it the one time this year because of everything else going on, but it's just a good reminder that there's other things happening. Yesterday, the DNR put out some 2020 fire season burning permit restrictions. They're gearing up. They're thinking ahead that we want to prevent any possible wildfire as much as we can. So I just caution us as a community to be sure we're situationally aware of other things that are happening around us. I mean, and obviously we have to respond to what happens here, but that's all I have for you folks this morning.
Okay. Thank you. We'll go on a roll call to see if there's any comments or questions. Start with Commissioner Mills.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mike. I don't have any questions at this time. Really appreciate the update and keeping on top of things. Over.
Thank you. Commissioner Starley?
Thank you, Chair Bersheim. Thanks, Mike, especially for keeping up regionally and with the state. It's important because things change so fast, and even though we all probably hear the governor, it's good to know what you're doing here locally to work with them and Lake County and let us know what's happening. Over.
Thank you. Commissioner DeKirk?
Mike, thanks for the update and the reminder that there are other things going on besides the COVID. And just for community members, a reminder that it is a severe weather reminder, not just a tornado. I know it's been over 20 years since we've had a tornado, but we all know that the high winds we get in Cook County can often be much more devastating than a tornado. So thank you, Mike, very much. Over.
Thank you. Commissioner DeShaw?
No questions. Thanks, Mike.
Okay. And I have none, but thanks for all your work. So with that, we will go to item 6 now, I guess. Is the highway reportment. Excuse me, someone has not turned on their mute. We're getting some feedback and heard some voices there in our emergency manager's comments. So please mute or turn off any sources of audio in the background. Thank you. Okay, so do we have Highway Engineer Foster with us to present on this? Okay, go ahead. We've received a written presentation of this, I believe, and then it was also on the website. So again, we'll turn it over to Highway Engineer Foster, and would you please share that information with us this morning?
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Commissioners, colleagues, and members of the public. I would like to introduce representatives from MnDOT and Arrowhead Regional Development Corporation this morning. Do we have Brian Anderson and Russell Huberman on?
Good morning, Kristen. This is Brian. Russell is unable to join us, but I will be providing the information he provided in the packet.
Thank you, Brian. And Commissioners, Mr. Anderson is the Planning Director for MnDOT District 1. He will provide an overview of MnDOT's upcoming construction program and talk a bit about the ATP committee that Commissioner DeShaw and I serve on behalf of Cook County. Over.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead.
All right. Well, thank you very much for allowing me the opportunity to share with you about MnDOT and our program this morning. There are a few things that I want to cover. There's 3 total things today that I would like to go over. First of all is an overview of our area transportation partnership. The second is an overview of MnDOT's annual construction budget. And thirdly is upcoming projects. I think what I'll do is pause halfway through my presentation for any questions, and then at the end as well. But I think I would like you to start off. We did email out a packet, or it was actually a paper packet, and I think it was PDF online. It would be page 4 in the PDF online, titled the Northeast Minnesota Area Transportation Partnership. The purpose of our ATP is to help MnDOT prioritize federal funds that come to the state of Minnesota. Across the state, we have 8 area transportation partnerships. And our area actually encompasses the 8 counties of the Minnesota Arrowhead. We're known as ATP-1. ATP members from Cook County include Commissioner Robert Deschamps, Cook County Engineer Kristen Foster, and Tony Swader from Grand Portage. We do have a total of 40 members that do sit on the ATP. ATP members help MnDOT assemble our Area Transportation Improvement Program. And last fall, the ATP solicited for $10 million in federal funding for local projects. If you want to turn to, I believe it's page 8 in the PDF now, in the handout, it does show a timeline of the ATP funding process. And then page 9 of the handout is kind of an overview of the funds that actually come to our district. For fiscal year 2024, MnDOT is expected to receive $99.2 million, which is about $57 million in federal funds and $42 million in state funds. On the local side, MnDOT will provide $10 million in funding for local projects, and that amount actually breaks down to about $2.96 million for road and bridge projects in the Duluth urban area, and about $4.4 million for road and bridge projects outside of the Duluth area. We do also have $1.7 million for safety and $900,000 for that transportation alternatives process. I'll pause here if there's any questions so far.
Okay, so we'll go with a roll call for questions. Commissioner Deschamps?
No questions.
On what's been presented so far?
You went through this last week.
Commissioner Deschamps, do you have any comments?
No, I'm good.
Okay, Commissioner Dukert?
No questions, just gratitude for Commissioner Distra's partnership and being on these meetings with his background and figuring out the funding and making sure that our area is represented. And hello, Brian, long time no see. Over.
Okay, Commissioner Mills?
This is Commissioner Mills. Thank you. No questions thus far. Over.
Commissioner Story?
Thank you. No questions so far.
Okay. And I have none but a recognition to Commissioner Deschamps for his work on this. So go ahead, Brian. Continue.
Okay, thank you. So Russell Haberman with the Arrowhead Regional Development Commission was going to join us today. MnDOT actually contracts with ARDC to facilitate some of our funding processes. And one of those funding categories is our transportation alternative projects. They encompass a variety of smaller scale transportation projects such as bike ped facilities, safe routes to school projects, transportation historic preservation, and other transportation community projects such as stormwater management and vegetation management. The TA projects that were selected for funding for fiscal year 2024 include the Kitchigami Trail from Two Harbors to Flood Bay, a segment of Safe Routes to School around the Cloquet School, and a segment of the Oberstar Trail in the Pine City High School. These projects are solicited each fall. We do have $900,000 available for bicycle pedestrian type facilities. So I encourage Cook County to continue to apply for these type of projects in the future. The next handout that I'm going to refer to is the 2020 District 1 construction handout. It's page 10 in the PDF. This handout provides an overview of our entire construction program for this upcoming summer. Projects to note that I'm sure you're fully aware of is the project number 14 there. It's the resurfacing from Cut Base just north of Highway 10 project, and I'll also do reconstruction through downtown Grand Marais. It'll include ADA improvements, drainage improvements. It's a $20 million project, so it's a very large project in our program. And then also another very large project we have in Cook County this summer is project number 15. It's resurfacing and bridge work between Reservation Road and the Canadian border. This project will start after July 1st. Culverts will be replaced this year, and a temporary bypass will also be constructed this year, but the majority of the work will actually occur in 2021, and that is a $15 million project. So over the course of this summer and next summer, we will have a lot of work going on in Cook County. And then moving into our 21 to 2024 program, that's the last page in the handout. It's a map of the overview of those projects. MnDOT only has one project listed in the program in Cook County, and that is in 2023. It's a rehabilitation of the Pigeon River Bridge for about $2.2 million. I did list 3 other projects on the map that are federal aid projects. We do list those in our state transportation improvement program, and they include a 2021 project for the DNR to construct the Loops and Trail segment, a 2023 bridge replacement funding for a bridge over the North River, or the North Road over the Flute River Reed River. That's $1.65 million with some bridge funding. And then also a CASA 12 project that Kristen applied for and was awarded $2.98 million to repave. Actually, it's a mill and overlay, a segment of the Gitchagami Trail from 5th Avenue West to the Devil's Track Road. So that's a brief overview of the ATP, some of the projects that MnDOT is working on, and some of our funding resources. I'm happy to answer any questions that there might be.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Anderson. Questions, comments? We'll start with Commissioner Starley.
Thank you. Well, being a practical person, I have been amazed and awed how truck traffic and oversized loads can be detoured up County Road 7 when I look at the hill that 18-wheelers have to do. That is something that's in the plans, I take it. Over.
Mr. Anderson, would you want to comment on that? Or?
So Michael Kallenbach is going to be following me from MnDOT. He's going to be talking about the detour plan, so I think he'll be next on the agenda.
Okay, very good.
To speak to that.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner, comment, question.
Commissioner who? No questions.
Commissioner Dukert?
No questions. Over.
Commissioner Mills?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Commissioner Mills. I don't have any questions. I do appreciate the update and just getting everything laid out in front of us. It's nice to see, just to know what we can expect. And I appreciate all the work. Over.
Thank you, and I would like to reiterate that to the department and to you, Brian, for all you're doing for our county and for our road system. It's an international highway as well for those big projects. So this is an informational only. Now we'll move on to the Highway 61 Project Detour Agreement, which was referenced, a comment by Commissioner Starley. So I'll turn that over to our Engineer Foster.
Good morning again. Do we have Michael Kallenbach on the line?
Yes, I am on the line.
And Mr. Kallenbach is the project manager for MnDOT's Highway 61 project. He will provide an update of the project itself and talk a little bit more about the proposed detour along County Road 7. Over.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. My name is Michael Kallenbach. Current role of Assistant District Engineer in District 1 out of Duluth. I was the project manager for the Highway 61 project that goes through Grand Marais. Some of you may recall I presented last May at the county board meeting for the, we were seeking approval for the cooperative construction agreement for the project as well. So then obviously different times I was able to meet in person, but so I'm here today on the line, going to give overall project overview of the upcoming project and request the approval of a detour agreement that was contained in your packets as well. We're at a point in the project now where we need to formalize the detour agreement and prepare to compensate Cook County for the use of the county roads that will be used as detours while our Trunk Highway 61 project is under construction. So initially here, just kind of overview of what the project is all about, kind of the limits of it. As you may remember, it's a joint project, really. There's a number of stakeholders, but the entities, MnDOT, have got obviously a chunk of money in it, the MPCA, Cook County, City of Grand Marais as well. Project description, about 12 miles in length, starts just north, a couple miles north of Cutface Creek, extends all the way up to Cook County Road 14, and kind of distinct segments, south of Grand Marais and north of Grand Marais proper, or preservation project is what we refer to them. They're a mill and overlay of the bituminous pavement. And then in town proper is what we call a full reconstruction. So we've got city utilities, water, sanitary sewer, storm sewer, reconstruction of sidewalk and bituminous trail, new traffic signal at Broadway in town. And then in there between 3rd Avenue West, 2nd Avenue West, there's a contaminated material site that the MPCA is funding the removal of materials that actually extends outside the right-of-way of MnDOT, but also underneath Trunk Highway 61. The overall project goals were really to reduce traffic speeds in Grand Marais downtown. What we could do to narrow 61, we constructed some bump outs in there as part of the plan. Try to improve pedestrian safety with new sidewalks, new ramps, and do a better job of defining pedestrian routes, and also make improvements to stormwater before the water exits into Lake Superior. So the current status of the project, the project was developed over many years with a local steering committee group, a lot of public involvement with the stakeholders, local units of government, Chamber of Commerce, citizen groups. And last June we let the final project out to two contractors, and the low bid contractor was KGM Contractors out of Angora. The let contract cost of just over $19 million. And no construction work started last year. There were some utility relocations that did get taken care of last year. Over the last number of months, all the right-of-way acquisition was finalized, and construction is going to get started soon. So one of the pieces that we're going to need, though, is we do need access to the detour routes so that we can get traffic put onto the detours for the upcoming construction activities. So the project itself is a 2-year project, and I'll kind of go over what's going to be contained in those 2 years, and of course open up to questions of more details if you'd like. But year 1, construction scheduled to start May 18th, so just over a month from now, and construction to end September 25th of this year is where our contract is. And what's going to be done in 2020 is the reconstruction of the Broadway Avenue intersection by the Holiday in town, including the new signal. The construction of the 8th Avenue West intersection by the campground. The Fall River box culvert would be replaced. And then the mill and overlay of the rural areas, so the north of Grand Marais and south of Grand Marais, the rural section that I refer to as preservation, and all the culverts associated with that. So that is what the intention, all that work would be done this year. And then in year 2, what that would what that would leave is really the downtown area urban reconstruct from 8th Avenue West, including the MPCA excavation in and around the Dairy Queen in town, all the way over to Broadway, and the work really in Grand Marais proper. Most of that work would be done in 2021. So as far as detour needs, the overall truck route, that was a reference here, when we have any of our narrowed lanes going through town, any of our construction activities, maintaining traffic through town, through Grand Marais is critical as part of our coordination with the steering committee and the businesses in town. So we want to make sure that we can maintain traffic through town, but big trucks, oversized trucks, are not going to be able to make it through the narrowed lanes as we're maintaining traffic through town. So the truck detour route that was defined and that we have included in our detour agreement is the use of County Road CASA 7. So if you're coming from the south, take CASA 7 around into Grand Marais, 5th Avenue West, and then north past the hospital up to the Gunflint, and then around back out to Highway 61. So I've got the dates associated with that too, but those are also spelled out in the detour agreement, and I can go through those if need be. So that is for the truck route, but individual detour dates or needs. For example, when we're constructing the Broadway intersection itself, we do have a 1-month detour of traffic around that intersection, which are also on County Road, which is First Avenue West and 2nd Street as well. And then the use of 8th Avenue West, also County Road, that would be what we're calling our regional detour. So our intent is for traffic for 2020, northbound traffic on 61 will be able to be maintained on 61 through town, but southbound would be taking what we call a regional detour. So they would be coming and looping around and coming out by the campground. So they'd be coming into Grand Marais, taking the Gunflint around, coming in past the hospital, and then coming out at the intersection by the campground. And the maps associated with that, there's no maps in the detour agreement that you're looking at, but those are all defined. We do have a project website. If need be, we can take a look at that too. But so that is in year 1 construction. Those are the detour routes that we'd be using, and those are the dates associated with the work. In 2021, kind of defined that already as far as what the work is. Primarily, it's the work in Grand Marais itself. And the only additional detour route that we'd be adding in 2021 is the use of Wisconsin Street and Broadway. So when we've got Highway 61 shut down completely, the northbound traffic would actually be coming from Duluth. When you come into town, you'd be turning right at onto Wisconsin Street and going past or going into downtown over to Broadway, and then coming back up at the new signal that we be building this construction season now. So I know there's a lot of dates and words there. Maybe I'll stop, and if there's any particular questions on the routing or details, I guess I'd like to answer those now, if I could.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Kleinbach. We'll start with questions, comments. We'll start with Commissioner Mills.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Commissioner Mills. I don't have questions about the route in specifically, but I do have questions just about the formula. I don't know if it'd be appropriate to talk about that now in regards to the compensation. Over.
Mr. Kleinbach, would you want to address that at this point in time, or?
I can try to address that now. or at least make note of what those questions are. I may have to do some research depending on what the question is.
Okay, Commissioner Mills, do you have any more specificity to that for him, or is it a general question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I was just noting in the summary that the formula was first developed in 1990 and then updated in 2010, and in my mind, that's a long time ago. And I expect significant use and impact on the detour routes. So I was just curious what's appropriate as far as revisiting that and just how those impacts are calculated over.
Okay, go ahead.
Michael, do you want me to try to address that?
If you could, that'd be great, Kristen.
Mr. Chair and Commissioner Mills, I can clarify the comments the Highway Department put in the packet with regards to the detour formula. The detour formula was developed in cooperation with county engineers when it was originally developed, and there is what's called a tax factor in there, and I could spend a lot of time talking about what I know about that, but I think what I would like to focus on for the purpose of answering the question is that the 2010 update was due to some of the changes that occurred at the state level with the gas tax specifically. So this formula does take into account how times have changed over the past 10 years since 2010. MnDOT conducts traffic counts on the highways at least every couple years, if not every year. The detour formula accounts for the variation in the length of the detour as well as the duration of the detour. So for what it's worth, I support the current formula and the basis for it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Someone has got an audio source on, I think. I hear myself speak. Please mute if you're listening to the broadcast. Okay, does that answer your question, Commissioner Mills?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Kristen. And that largely answers it, and having your backing gives me a lot more confidence in it. And I just wanted to be sure that just my general knowledge is that our infrastructure around the state needs a lot of work, and the funding that is being provided is not keeping up with the costs. And I was afraid that we were getting trapped in that, and whether we are or aren't, I don't know. Now is this project is the time to address that, but I just wanted to talk about that a little bit. So thank you for clarifying. Over.
Okay. Very good. Commissioner Storley.
I have no questions. Thank you. Over.
Okay. Commissioner DeShaw?
Yeah, I do have questions. The biggest concern of mine is the truck traffic coming from the west into Grand Marais and then by the hospital and then turning up Fifth Avenue. I'm probably the only person on this phone call that has driven a truck before and that has hauling oversized loads and wood, lumber, etc. And I just don't see that being a safe route, cutting up Fifth and then back onto the Gunflint there. Over.
Okay. Would someone like to address that, either Kristen or Mr. Kornbach?
So this is Michael. So from a traffic safety perspective, we have looked at our traffic folks have looked at both of those intersections, and given the geometry there, I think we talked previously about the installation of a temporary traffic signal at County Road 7 and Fifth Avenue West. That will also be put in this construction season as well to control the traffic there. at that intersection, just because there's going to be additional traffic added there. The geometry and the traffic turning movements that we've been able to model, there is adequate room there to make those movements.
Okay. Commissioner DeShaw, any comment or further questions on that?
Yeah, I will keep going on it there. If you're hauling a load of wood and you're pulling out, I'm talking about on Fifth Avenue onto the Gunflint, again, I will probably guess that you have never driven a truck before or hauled a oversized load or anything else. This is a concern of mine. It is a concern of other truck drivers in the county too. It's just not safe. And your models or whatever you have, you can look at your models all you want, but until you get in a truck yourself and do it, you don't have no idea. And that's what I have. Over.
Okay. Any other comments to that, or we'll move on? Mike or Kristen?
So you are correct.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I've not driven a truck.
There you go.
And that is something that we could look at that intersection. As far as slow-moving vehicles, I'm assuming that's what you're referring to, coming out of Fifth Avenue and turning either to go up the hill or down.
Okay.
Over.
The only other option would be to go straight, correct?
Yeah, it's past the school.
To go past the school.
That truck
Right.
route was past the school my whole
But
life.
then you would
when I
have
went
the
to school
same
and yours
thing,
too.
would you
So.
have the same situation?
I don't know what
with the
changed.
intersection down at the bottom? Commissioner Shaw, I guess that's a question. Would it be the same situation at the bottom of the slope if we went straight ahead to the east?
Yeah, if you went straight ahead on 7 with trucks, you know, everybody's concerned about the schools. I went to school here, I graduated here. There's another person here in the courtroom that went to school there. The truck route used to go past the school, so it isn't nothing new. You know, it's, you cut down the speed limit is what you do. You know, you want to talk about safety. It's safer for a truck to go through the school zone at 20 miles an hour than have a truck trying to take off on a hill and go up another hill from a dead stop. You know, and the truck route
Okay.
was past the school for 40 years.
So the situation at the bottom of that slope on 7th would not be similar enough to be a problem?
Well, you could probably jump in your car, Myron, after this meeting and go and look at the difference. It's pretty easy to see.
Yeah, okay. So, no, I appreciate your experience, and that's why I'm asking. Yeah. All right.
And then it's down.
I know from the steering committee that we worked with in town, there were concerns about having any increased traffic past the school. Just due to, my understanding was there was, at least at that time, there was a daycare that was there, and there was a lot of kids that crossed the Fifth Avenue West at that location. I don't know if that's still the case or not, but that was some of the feedback we received, and not want any additional traffic on Fifth Avenue West.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Dukirk?
This is Commissioner Dukirk. I'm just going to fully back up to Commissioner DeShaw.
Yeah.
Almost every single conversation we've had on this project, we have brought up that intersection and the danger of it. And I really appreciate engineers and their models, and they're absolutely wonderful when everything is working. If we have a truck, there's a runaway truck ramp by the water tower for when brakes go out. I'm sorry, public, shit happens. Things break. Things go wrong. You cannot use formulas and mathematics when something goes wrong. When we constantly have accidents at that intersection because of weather and nature and other things going on, and yes, there is 2 daycares on either side of the road by the school. There have always been daycares by the school. There have been more kids by the school, and this project is in the summertime. School is not in session in the summer, And if there's a concern, then let's put a temporary stoplight on that road and make it so that kids have to cross at a certain time. I don't know, but we have said over and over and over again, and you have a truck driver, you have a daughter of a truck driver, and we're saying, don't do this. Don't send the trucks up there. I am the queen of mathematics and numbers, and I love them, and I love engineers and all of that, but that's not going to help us when something goes wrong. Over.
Thank you. I don't have any comments or questions. This is an approved and authorized interim county administrator and county auditor to sign the Minnesota DOT agreement number 1036728. We've had comments on this, and it's time to see if there's a motion that someone would like to make to approve this.
Mr. Chair, this is Commissioner Mills. I have further comments and questions, if I may. Over.
Yes, thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I share the concerns of that intersection, and you know, fooey on me for assuming that all the options had been looked at and vetted. And in my mind, my inexperience with trucking mind, the County Road 7 route to the Gunflint made a lot more sense. I understand the concerns of daycares and the school and just the youth activities in that corridor, and thought that was probably the reason. But you know, there are, as Commissioner Dukirk said, there are potential solutions that can be worked out there, whether it be a temporary light at Broadway and County Road 7, or other means just to slow things down. I think it would be a much better route to maintain control of traffic and potentially, you know, faulty vehicles. And I just assumed that the Gunflint Trail was better constructed for truck traffic. But yeah, going up 5th Avenue West to that stop sign on the Gunflint Trail and 5th Avenue West, and then taking off with a full load around that corner. I mean, either way, it's almost a blind intersection coming down the hill. So I can see Commissioner DeShaw's point very clearly and fully support it. So I don't know what needs to happen or how we resolve this, or if it can be resolved today or what. And so I guess I would ask Engineer Foster for her input and advice on how to proceed. Over.
Thank you. Yep, that's a good question. I think we'll turn this over to what would be the professional's judgment on this, as far as it appears that we're concerned about that intersection. And, you know, was two things we could do. We could take a vote on what's been proposed. I think that would be a protocol, and if it does not pass, then I guess we could look at, you know, how to go further with our decisions. But I guess I'm going to refer, before we do that, to Highway Engineer Foster and Mike Combat for their comments on how this could proceed. Is there something that could be worked out and come back to it, or what would you recommend at this point from your professional view? Go ahead.
Mr. Chair and Commissioners, I think there were some good and not unexpected questions that were raised this morning. I did want to be clear that the original detour route did propose going straight through that intersection, and as Mr. Kallenbach mentioned, the change was made at the request of community members. So that's not to say that we can go back to that decision and see if continuing straight on County Road 7 is a viable option. One question that I can address up front from the County Highway Department's perspective is that I would not recommend another temporary stoplight at the intersection of Broadway and County Road 7 or at the intersection of the Gunflint and County Road 7 if the detour does change. I would ask for more time to work with MnDOT over the next week or so to answer these questions and come back with some answers to the board meeting on April 28th. So I don't know if this detour agreement could be tabled or what the best course of action is from a protocol perspective. But I would ask for more time to work with Mr. Kallenbach and the others at MnDOT to answer your questions and come back with more information at the next regular meeting.
Okay, so thank you. So as board chair, I'm going to suggest that we table this, but I would like to do a roll call, just a comment before we take official action on that, if there's anything else that we'd like them to take a look at in regards to getting this on the agenda for April 28th with follow-up on our concerns so far. So I'll just start with any further comments or questions in regards to tabling this. Commissioner Storley?
No further comment. I would be in favor of it. Over.
Okay, Commissioner Mills?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it's a good idea to table it and look at the options regarding those two routes. Over.
Thank you. Commissioner DeShaw?
Yeah, I'd like to see it tabled until.
Okay, Commissioner Dukert?
Whatever that is.
Yeah, I'd like to table it, and if anyone from the steering committee is listening, I understand your concerns. I don't know if any of you have driven an oversized load 18-wheeler before, but I've been in one, so never driven it. But yes, I agree to tabling. Over.
Okay. And I also agree with tabling. So I'll entertain a motion to table this motion to table this presentation for our approval to April 28th, following up on the concerns with that intersection and some of the alternatives or changes that we could make in I guess going forward. So would someone like to make a motion on that?
This is Michael.
Oh, go ahead, Michael.
I've got one additional question, maybe before you do that, and I don't know if it has an impact or not. But so we've got what we called our regional detour for just passenger cars going around Grand Marais, the town itself, that would be taking that route on the Gunflint and coming down past the hospital. Is that also a concern, or is it just the trucks? Trying to figure out, would we have two different detours? Let's say we got to where the truck detour stayed on County Road 7. Would we still have the passenger car detour route be signed around? Or are we saying we don't want anybody going on the County Road, on the Gunflint? We want everybody going on County Road 7. Just a question.
Okay, yes, I guess my comment on that, and let others have that opportunity, is that was discussed in that steering committee, and I think one of the options, or the original one, was just to do the truck traffic on 7th, and then the cars would go up. Is that correct, Michael or Kristen? Is my memory correct on that?
I don't. This is Michael. I don't recall. We talked about a number of different options. I can't remember if that was one of them.
Okay. Okay. Well, I guess could you present both and the rationale for them, and that way we could maybe slim this down. But I will ask for anyone else that has concerns about that, but maybe could have both options be presented, or the pros and cons in each one? Is that possible? I guess I think it would be good to get your recommendation first.
Okay.
Comments, please.
Mr. Chair, this is Commissioner Mills.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I was trying to think about that, if we could have a blend of the two routes, and certainly my bigger concern is the trucks and that hill. To Commissioner Dukirk's point, I have witnessed accidents at that intersection just with passenger vehicles as well. And so, I mean, there's going to be increased traffic there, so there just needs to be, I don't know if that's a better route or not for just cars at large or in general. But certainly, I would hope there's a lot more signage coming down the hill. From my experience, that's where I've seen accidents, is people coming down rather quickly and somebody pulling out from Fifth Avenue, turning left, going up the hill, sort of situation, or I don't really know. But I don't have a solution, but I think it's worth looking at separating trucks and semis and heavy loads from just general traffic. So I don't have the knowledge or experience to make a recommendation there. I'm open, but a concern with the heavy loads going up is the strongest concern. Over.
Okay. Anyone else have a comment before I call for a motion to table this? I think it's understood that we would ask that they would make a recommendation to us in regards to the traffic versus the truck differences. Any other questions or comments? Please state your name.
This is Heidi, Commissioner Dukirk, and Dave, if we continue with auto traffic going up, turning onto the Gunflint and put the temporary stoplight in, that will minimize accidents and other things going on, and I think people will adjust to the additional traffic there and be aware that that's a high visibility intersection. So I would be fine with splitting up and having passenger traffic go up to a lighted intersection and trucks going in front of the school, and that may minimize some of the concerns of safety for the daycares, the YMCA, and other things going on the road if it's just trucks coming down. Over.
Thank you. I agree with you, Commissioner Dukirk. Any other comments before we call for a motion to table it? Okay, so I will entertain a motion that we will table this, and we'll have a presentation made to us on April 28th that hopefully we'll be able to approve. And from what I understand, the most serious consideration would be to separate the truck and car traffic. So I would entertain a motion for that. Would you please state your name? And
Commissioner Dishaw makes the motion to table.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion by Commissioner Shaw. Do I have a second?
Support, Commissioner Dukirk. Over.
Okay, Commissioner Dukirk. Roll call vote. Commissioner Mills.
This is Commissioner Mills. Aye. Over.
Thank you. Commissioner Dukirk.
Aye. Over.
Commissioner Deshaw.
Aye. Over.
Commissioner Storley.
Aye. Over.
And Commissioner Bersheim is aye. So it is unanimous. And we'll move on. Thank you so much, Michael and Kristen, for being with us today and all the work that you've done. And hopefully we can move on to a good compromise with this.
All right, thanks for your time.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we'll go to land services. I guess I'm going to ask a question. It's going to be really difficult, but would you like to have a 5-minute or a 7-minute break? And we'll just stay on, and if you need to take care of your needs or stand up or something like that, let's just all stay online. And let's just take a 5-minute break and be back with us at exactly a quarter after. And does anyone object to that? Okay, then let's just take a 5-minute break, and we'll start at 10:15.
When you wear one of these, no one can see you.
Should have never even came this far. I brought that up 2 years ago.
Yeah, that's what my dad did.
report. So it said that 400 trucks was the average daily. So do you know how that number, how they came up with it? Was it average daily of a year of their traffic counts?
They must
and
have
where
did.
did they do it from?
Must have did it on Highway 61.
So that's on what, and was it summer counts? Was it winter counts? Was it, because if we're talking trucks, July, August.
Yeah.
So those are the questions that we ask. And that's, I totally get also have concerns that I question, according to their numbers. 400 trucks every day. It's moving
Okay, it's 10:15. Just going to see if we have everyone. Mr. Deshaw, are you there?
He's in the room.
Okay, Commissioner DeKirk,
Here, over.
Commissioner Mills,
Here, over.
Commissioner Storley.
Present.
Okay. Very good. We'll move on to land services. First item is the Day Logan interim use permit consideration, and is Tim or Bill going to present on this?
Yes, this is Tim Nelson.
Okay.
And can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I can.
Okay,
Okay,
good.
go
Thank
ahead,
you.
Tim.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, commissioners and everyone else. This first item is a request by Christine Day and Alyssa Logan for an interim use permit, which is going to be on their property located just east of Grand Marais. This is essentially a continuation of the interim use permit that they had received back in 2018 for the 2019 season. The purpose of the interim use permit is for hosting 6 retreat events over the course of the summer. The proposal is to start in late June and go for 6 consecutive weekends. This is basically the third time that this type of operation has been discussed with you. First in late 2018 was the initial interim use permit request. In late 2019, after the completion of the 2019 season, we basically held a review of that season, which came to the commissioners as well, and then now this interim use permit request, the new one. This request is for a 3-year period. The public hearing was held on March 11th, and basically, as you can tell by the comments that were made this morning, and if you recall the discussions that were held each time, the issues are pretty much the same. We didn't really hear much in regards of new comments this morning. And at the public hearing, we had one verbal comment presented, and then the rest of the written comments are in your packet. The Planning Commission was basically evenly split in that discussion, with the main concern following in the number 2. There are 4 criteria basically that is set for approving a conditional/interim use permit, and the Planning Commission all kind of felt that the 1 and 3 and 4 would be met, but there was some contention over number 2. The number 2 criteria says that the use is compatible with the existing neighborhood, and that kind of falls in line with all of the comments that you have heard. Is that there was concerns as to whether there was noise, traffic, all of this stuff, and whether it was even compatible as a home business within a smaller residential area like this. There was some discussion as to whether it should even be considered a home business or not. In the end, basically the Planning Commission was evenly split, and there was first a motion for denying the permit outright, which that motion actually failed on a 3-4 vote, and then there was a motion to go ahead and approve the permit, but under the condition that it would not be for a 3-year period, but that it would only be for an additional 1-year period. And the kind of thought process that was associated with that was that because the concerns are coming in from one side and another side and such, and we don't really have objective comments or objective observations of the standards. So the Planning Commission on the 4-3 vote, felt that it could go for one more year, provided that land services staff would be available to observe at least one of the sessions to be able to objectively determine whether the concerns were valid or not. And so that's the way that the Planning Commission voted, is to go ahead and recommend approval of the interim use permit for just a 1 year period of time. And of course, that the discussion was all held before any of the COVID-19 concerns came up. And so in hearing some of the comments with regards to concerns about people coming up and such like that, you know, the decision and the responsibility, you know, does fall with the Board of Commissioners in terms of public health and safety or granting the permit. So I'll just turn it over for any questions that you may have. Over.
Thank you, Tim. Okay, so we'll go on a roll call for questions or comments about the recommendation that's coming to us from the Planning Commission. So we'll start with Commissioner Storley.
Thank you, Chairman. I, there again, along with Tim, reviewed the summary going back to March 11th, and a lot has changed since then. A lot meaning that we are now under the governor's request that we all stay in place. And we don't know where this is going to go. The governor will review this later on the first part of May. I think with the idea of bringing in over the retreat weekends over 100 people, that this would not be wise. And so at this particular juncture, in looking this over, with even the criteria aside that the Planning Commission did offer to look at renewing their permits, that our health concerns are quite important. We go along with the governor in discouraging folks not to visit us right now or maybe in the future. We don't know. So my concern would be that I would not be in favor of granting a permit, and I would actually vote to deny it. Over.
Okay. Okay, Commissioner Mills, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Commissioner Mills, and I certainly share concerns about the COVID-19. I just don't know if we should be granting or denying permits based on that. I feel like there are some fairly clear guidelines, and they get clearer and clearer as time goes on and we refine them, but as to how we can judge whether or not to issue a permit. And so I just like a little clarity from Director Nelson on if the COVID-19 pandemic is incorporated into our permit review process or granting thereof. Over.
Okay, thank you. So, Mr. Nelson, would you like to just comment on that?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Mills, that's actually a really good question. I did have this conversation with the Attorney Jay Squires with regards to the current COVID-19 situation and whether those concerns could be taken into consideration with regards to evaluating the permit request. And it was his opinion that indeed the board does have the responsibility for public health and safety, and under a global pandemic and governor's orders, those items can be taken into consideration, provided that it's taken into consideration for other things, like if there's other group activities or large event permits that need to be evaluated, that those same considerations would be applied equally. But yes, ultimately, he did say that the board would have the flexibility to take that into consideration.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Mills, does that answer your question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Commissioner Mills, and thank you, Director Nelson. That answers my question perfectly. And the only other question I might have is concerns brought up about taxation, and if any of those concerns should be factors in our decision. Over.
Okay, Mr. Nelson, would you want to comment on that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Mills. Actually, the way that the taxation works, taxation is not dependent upon zone district. It is really dependent upon activity. This actually would be a good question for the county assessor to be able to respond to, but I do know of operations out there that are home businesses or home occupations that are zoned residential and may be taxed depending on their level of activity as commercial operations. So yes, it is possible that determination is made by the assessor's office and doesn't really have much to do with the interim use permit or with the zone district, but with the level of activity that is taking place on the property.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Mills, does that answer your question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Commissioner Mills, and yeah, that answers my question as well. It seems that what we permit potentially enables a use, and that use then determines the tax classification. That's what I took from that. I don't have any other questions at this time, and I'm fairly certain more will come up, but that's all for now. Thank you. Over.
Okay, we'll go to Commissioner Dukert. Comments, questions?
Yeah, Tim, this morning a comment was made that the dates could be changed. So my question is kind of twofold. Can we as the commissioner change the dates, like eliminate the June one on the basis of COVID? And if after this is approved, if it's approved today, can the dates be changed, or does it need to go back before the Planning Commission? And I will wait for your answer. I have further comments.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Dukert. This is Director Nelson. That is a really good question, and that brings up that concept of allowing in comments after the public hearing. So the public hearing did take place on March 11th and was completed. That's where all of the public comment specific to the case should occur. What happens is if there's any more additional information that comes in subsequent to the completion of the public hearing, then the Board of Commissioners has to make a determination if there is enough information that may have changed the decision of the Planning Commission, and then they could send that back to the Planning Commission. Otherwise, some people will purposely maybe bypass the Planning Commission to try to influence the board, and then that just kind of scraps the whole public hearing concept when the Planning Commission is supposed to be doing the deliberation and with all of the comments and provide the recommendation. Like I said, if more information comes in and such that it would change, the board has the option to remand the issue back to the Planning Commission for reconsideration, since if enough information came up, then maybe the Planning Commission would have their own questions, and the deliberation might change as regard to that information. Now, can the Board of Commissioners make modifications to the permit request after it's gone through the public hearing? Again, that would be dependent upon how big of a change it would be. So if we public notice the specific dates, and the public hearing was held regards to specific dates, and then later on those dates change to a whole nother time frame, well then all of that public comment, and I know we did get some specific comment in on that to the use of those dates, that discussion might change substantively. And so in a case where it would change substantively, it would be wise to remand it back to the Planning Commission, but the Board of Commissioners can make minor adjustments in the dates of granting of the permit. Over.
Thank you very much, Tim. And it was the applicant that made the suggestion of changing the date. So I think a recommendation to the rest of my fellow commissioners would be that we send it back to the Planning Commission, since the COVID epidemic basically came into discussion after they had their meeting. Some clarification, Commissioner Storley, this is not for 100 people. They've never had 100 people. They had as many as 50 people before they knew they had to have a permit. Commissioner Mills, on taxation, we've been told over and over again when it comes to vacation rentals that the assessor's office bases a property's description or type of use on the most predominant use. We're talking about 18 days. 18 days. For the love of Christmas. This is not what they do. Now, if the board wants to deny this permit because of COVID, then I'm going to ask you to also shut down the vacation rental right next door that has 14 persons, because that also exceeds the 10-person recommendation by the governor. So if you all want to cancel this based on COVID and that's your reasoning, I'm okay with that also, instead of sending it back to the Planning Commission. But then I would ask that you also shut down the vacation rental. You know, when the neighbors are sitting here saying it doesn't fit the neighborhood, well, how come a 14-person vacation rental 250 nights a year or more fits the neighborhood, but 18 days is just too disruptive? I'm sorry. Over.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Dukert. Commissioner DeShaw, comments, questions?
Yeah, reading through the Planning Commission's discussion that they had on it, and at the end of it there, they said they had only one call to the Sheriff's Department. Last year, I voted no on this permit because I didn't think it fit the neighborhood. I still don't think it fits the neighborhood, but it definitely helped this morning that had Miss Day came last year and explained, you know, that's a big thing for me is, you know, a piece of paper is a piece of paper, but I need to hear it from you on what actually goes on. I know I say that in a lot of different things there, whether it's something like this or the revolving loan fund. I need to hear from the people themselves. And that's, I guess we'll see where it goes from here with a motion or a vote, I guess. But
okay. Well, I'll just comment. I don't have any questions. I did not vote for this in the beginning. I don't think, at that time, I didn't feel it fit the neighborhood. I visited the area, talked to some people, and so the issue number 2, proper fit for the neighborhood, I just don't see that as anything different. There are some restrictions, but still, I just don't think this is an appropriate use for that type of neighborhood. I wouldn't want it in my neighborhood where my residences are, and it has nothing to do with the activity. I've been involved in chanting groups for Lakota tradition and drumming and so well in my past, but you know, we did it in the appropriate place, and so I just don't think it's an appropriate use, and that's where I'm at, and could not support this for that reason. So going forward, I guess it's time to make a motion, and I guess we'll just see how this goes. I'm just going to open it up to a motion whether we should accept or reject this. I guess that'll depend upon the person that wants to make it. So we'll call, we'll just make it open for a motion from any commissioner. State your name, state your motion, and then we'll see if there's support and go through a discussion and vote on that motion. You can just take a motion by the motion. Come up.
Commissioner Dukirk, I make a motion to send it back to the Planning Commission for review of dates due to the new COVID-19
outbreak. Over.
Okay, we have a motion to send it back for review to the Planning Commission, specifying that it only pertains to the date, correct?
Correct. And just in response to Commissioner DeShaw, that one law enforcement call was by the people that have gone around this system over and over again opposing it. Over.
Okay, so do we have a second to the motion by Commissioner Dukert?
This is Commissioner Mills. I second the motion to send it back to the Planning Commission and review dates. Over.
Okay, so we have a second to the motion. Then now we will go through a roll call on comments or questions. I guess it's mainly just comments, giving a general idea of your concern or not concern for the motion to send it back, and it would only apply to the change in date. And then at that time, I guess we vote again. So, Commissioner DeShaw, comments, questions on that?
Yeah, I'll support sending it back to the Planning Commission. And then there's one more comment I'd like to say here. You know, I don't live in Grand Marais. I live up on the reservation, and some days on the reservation, go out on my porch and I hear drumming, you know, and in our culture up in Grand Portage, people go out, they drum, they pray, and it's something, I guess, in the culture in Grand Portage, there being an Indian reservation, that you get used to. You know, the first time you hear it, it's like, what's that? But other than that, you know, listening to Miss, that it's very low key, and I guess that's what I have to say.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Dukert?
Yes, I would like to thank my fellow commissioners for taking this into consideration. I would also like to thank Ms. Day and Ms. Logan. It was your suggestion at public comment this morning in being willing to adjust your days. In sitting on the Planning Commission and the numerous times this has come forward, you have been nothing but willing to adjust. I know there has been some confusion and some misunderstanding of dates and times, and I trust that you will take this all into consideration. I apologize if putting this back on makes it difficult for you to set the dates with your clients, but it sounds like you have already addressed all of that. So again, thank you for your willingness to adjust, and I hope we'll get you on in May and get this figured out as to whether or not you go forward. It is probably quite necessary for the people that come to your retreats this year to have this opportunity to heal and have community. So thank you very much. Over.
Thank you, Commissioner Dukert. Commissioner Mills?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I guess my comments is I had an invitation from an adjacent property owner to go and look at the site and from their perspective, from their property, and you know, I've kind of gone back and forth and all over the place with this issue, just hearing from various people and looking at maps, and then again visiting the site certainly influenced me, and you know, I appreciate the applicant's willingness to adjust and try to resolve any conflicts or potential conflicts. You know, I know it's not always easy working with neighbors, and you know, at this time, just the front of my mind is the pandemic, and I appreciate your flexibility with that in mind as well. Over.
Thank you, Commissioner Mills. Commissioner Storley?
I would like a clarification again on the dates. Is she proposing that they move them up this year to August, September? A clarification, please.
Okay, I think that there would be someone there that recorded that. I have it. I can find it here. But does someone have that recorded? I guess Stacy, are you there, or someone that
It was in her public comment.
has written that down, or someone else? I know it was changed to June and September.
Mr. Chair,
I'll turn it over to someone to provide those specific dates.
Right, Mr. Chair, Ms. Day is still here. We've asked her to come to the microphone. She can answer that question.
Okay, so
Could we, could she just come, I don't think you have to come up to the mic, but just indicate the dates, and then interim administrator Rogers, you can repeat them to us in the public.
She's up to the mic now.
I don't have a diary right in front of me to be able to, but what we were considering was late August into September.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
So they would run into the long week, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, over 6 weekends.
That was not clear to me, so would someone please repeat that into a mic or phone that's clear?
She said late August into September, over 6 weekends. So Commissioner
Late August to September.
Yep. Commissioner DeShaw was, they've got a calendar they're looking at right now.
Starting on the 21st.
Starting on the 21st of August.
Okay.
This is Heidi, Mr. Chair. That's not part of this conversation. We don't make that decision. It'll have to go back to the Planning Commission. Over.
Okay. Thank you. I agree. Does that answer your question, Commissioner Storley? I guess it's...
Well, yes, it answers my question, because if we're sending it back to the Planning Commission, I think we needed to kind of have an idea about Ms. Day's schedule herself. And if it goes back to the Planning Commission, then they'll deal with it there. Over.
Okay. All right. And I'll just make my comments. Changing the date for me does not change the use in the neighborhood. So it doesn't fit my criteria for acceptable for the neighborhood use, no matter what the dates are or how many days they are. So it's just a matter of principle to me, what I think is doing right for the neighborhood. I do appreciate what the Planning Commission has done. They've spent a lot of time on this, and I certainly give them credit, and so I don't want to say that my comments are negative to the process or what anyone else thinks about it, but it does not fit my criteria for what I think is appropriate in that neighborhood. I represent that area. I spend quite a bit of time on it, talking to people and looking at the situation. And all due respect, I just think it's a neighborhood use issue, and I'm going to stand on that. Pretty much, I think, no matter what the dates are, or the pandemic situation. So I will vote against the extension for that reason, but let's go to the vote. So we have a motion to send this back to the Planning Commission and look at a date change, and then have it come back to us at a further date. So I'll call a roll call vote on that motion. We'll start with Commissioner Storley. You vote yes or no?
I'm voting no.
Okay. Commissioner Mills.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Commissioner Mills. Aye. Over.
Aye. Okay. Commissioner Dukirk.
Commissioner Dukirk, aye. Over.
Commissioner DeShaw.
Aye.
Okay. Commissioner Bersheim is nay. No. It does pass. So this will be sent back to the Planning Commission and coming back to us at a further date. Thank you, Ms. Day, I think it was, for showing up with us today and making a personal appearance and providing us more information. And we really appreciate your efforts with that. Okay, we'll go on to Carter Superior condition use permit request. And I believe that'll be Mr. Nelson again.
That's correct, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much. And that is conditional use permit request. And this is actually two conditional use permits, but one relative discussion about that. And this is basically, this does not involve any new construction. This is bringing an existing condition into either compliance or not. And basically what this is there was a permit issued several years ago, a couple decades ago, back in the mid to late 90s, for the expansion of a guest cabin, which subsequently over time turned into a duplex. A duplex is considered to be a conditional use in that particular zone district. And then on top of that, if there was a regular home and a duplex, that renders it into 3 habitable dwellings on the property, which is in conflict with Minnesota Rule 6120 for 3 residential dwellings on 1 parcel, which is also another conditional use permit. And so they're kind of tied together for that. As I indicated, there is no new construction with this. The Planning Commission public hearing was held on March 11th, and basically the concerns that were expressed were, when was this constructed? This is a new property owner. They purchased this a few years ago. They indicated that they had consulted with the realtor at the time as to whether there were any nonconformities associated with the property, and were informed no, that as far as the realtor was concerned, that the property was in compliance. And so this is a new property owner, and we're basically taking a look back at these conditions that exist on the property. And so the concern, as I indicated, was when this was done, we certainly don't want somebody creating a nonconformity condition and then profiting by it through the sale of property. But through the discussions, it was considered that this had been in place for some time. And that there didn't appear to be any malice or of intent or so by the property owners that own it at this point. There had been some discussion and concern as to its impact on the vacation rental, because this property would be used as vacation rentals, and there was concern, and this was a staff concern as well, which came out in the recommendation for denial initially. Is because in just creating the vacation rental ordinance, one of the things that we're kind of charged to do is not create circumstances which would then violate the terms of a different ordinance, which would be the vacation rental ordinance, since that requires that there's only 2 vacation rentals on the property. I had discussions again with the attorney Squires on this issue, and basically the way that it is that the duplex itself is what would be considered a illegal nonconformity. It was one that was constructed after the adoption of our modern ordinance, which is why it needs to be corrected at this time. But in the fact that the vacation rental aspect of it was used prior to the adoption of our vacation rental ordinance, that would indeed then be a grandfathering. And so any decision that you would make with regards to this particular case would not set any kind of precedence with that respect. So the Planning Commission, after further discussion, went ahead and moved to pass both conditional use permits. The vote was 6-1 on each, and at that, I'll just open it up for any questions. Over.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Nelson. So we'll open it up for questions or comments. Commissioner Ducourt.
I have none. Over.
Thank you. Commissioner DeShaw.
No comments. Over.
Commissioner Mills?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Commissioner Mills, and thank you, Director Nelson, for the summary and the report. That was very thorough and gave me a good perspective on the application. Over.
Okay, thank you. And I have no questions or comments. So I'll entertain the motion from what I'm hearing to approve the 2 conditional use permits submitted by the Heart of Superior LLC to approve that project, or change, excuse me. So,
Commissioner
would you state your
Dukert,
name?
motion to approve.
Thank you. Commissioner Dukert, do we have a second?
Commissioner Starley, second.
Okay. Any more comments? Commissioner DeShawn?
No comment. Are we voting?
Or is it two permits? or-
Commissioner Dukert?
Do it once or two separate votes?
No questions, over.
Commissioner
I think it's just
Story?
one.
I do have one comment, and this particular property is in my district, so I have personally gone to look at it. I've been in touch with the new owners, and life is, everything is about timing. So I appreciate looking into this from the Planning Commission and from our
And
board
just one.
perspective. Thank you.
Thank you. And I certainly don't have any issue with it at all. So we'll do a roll call.
Mr. Chair?
vote. Yeah, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Chair, this is Tim Nelson. I just want a point of clarification that there are 2 conditional use permit requests, so I wanted to make sure for the record that if this vote is being taken, that it is for actually both of them, or if you wanted to split them into the 2.
I proposed the question.
My motion was for both.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for checking. Okay. So we'll do a roll call vote on this. Commissioner Starley?
Aye, over.
Commissioner Mills?
This is Commissioner Mills. Aye. Over.
Commissioner Dukert?
Aye, over.
Commissioner DeShaw?
Aye.
Commissioner Bersheim is aye. Okay, passed unanimously. Thank you. Okay, item C under 6 Land Services is new SCORE agreement, SCORE. And we got a PDF on that, and so this is to designate and authorize Solid Waste Administrator Timothy Nelson to sign the new SCORE grant agreement for the continuation for partial state funding of the Cook County Recycling Program. Any comments on that, Mr. Nelson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And yeah, I could have put this onto the consent agenda, and I have run the agreement by the county attorney, who indicated that in form and function that it is a solid agreement. The reason why I kept it off is I just wanted to give you kind of the heads up that though it is, we kind of do need to sign it in order for us to keep the funding going for our recycling program. But just giving you the heads up that there are a few issues with it, areas of concerns that we're working through AMC and our association to try and fix for next year's agreement. And that's all.
Okay. So, any questions or comments? Commissioner DeShaw?
No questions.
Commissioner Dukert?
No questions, over.
Commissioner Mills?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Commissioner Mills. Director Nelson, could you go into a little more specifics about your concerns with the agreement? Over.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Mills. They're minor. This is boilerplate language, and we've had a few meetings with the MPCA. This comes out of the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. We have had a few meetings between our association and them in terms of just kind of minor things that do pose a little bit of a problem. It's not as much of a problem because really the funds that are relative to this are only the funds that they provide for us. The bulk of our recycling funds come in from both the redemption of materials that we use and the general tax funds.
we have a small percentage of these funds that it would pertain to, and basically it's some of the provisions are intellectual rights to properties that's developed as we anything through this grant, acknowledgement of the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency and all of our ads, and just a kind of a list of just standard boilerplate stuff that we wanted to really kind of gear specifically more towards our operation than what they generally have.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Commissioner Mills?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Director Nelson. That does answer my questions. Thanks for diving in a little bit there. Over.
Commissioner Starley, comments, questions?
I do not, thank you. Over.
Okay. Well, I think from what I'm hearing, we could entertain a motion to approve the SCORE agreement to have Mr. Nelson sign the new agreement as presented. So would you state your name and your motion, please?
This is Commissioner Mills. I make the motion to designate and authorize Solid Waste Administrator Timothy Nelson to sign the new SCORE grant agreement for the continuation of partial state funding of the Cook County Recycling Program. Over.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a second?
Starley, support.
Okay, Commissioner Starley, second. So, okay, we'll have a roll call vote. Commissioner DeShaw?
Aye.
Commissioner Kirk?
Aye. Over.
Commissioner Mills?
Commissioner Mills, aye. Over.
Commissioner Starley?
Aye. Over.
And Commissioner Bersheim is aye. Very good. Passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Nelson, for all your work and being with us today.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. And in follow-up, I will go ahead and send basically a marked-up copy of the concerns, or a list of the concerns that we would have with the grant to the Commissioners in the next couple weeks.
Very good. Thank you. That'd be very helpful. That's good. Okay, we're going to our auditor, item 8 in our agenda. Auditor.
Mr. Chair, I do not have anything in the, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, I don't have any item on the agenda, but just bring to your attention, I'd like to discuss with you any options for property tax release at the Committee of the Whole meeting next week.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
We'll present and I think I sent this out, the AMC has been working on it with counties. They have a model and guidance, and there are many options out there that counties are contemplating, talking about, and soon we'll discuss all of those in our own, financial situation. Right now I've sent out emails to the towns, the city, school and hospital to gauge their financial situation should we ask or put in place any forgiveness of penalties that might delay some payment of property taxes, how it might affect others, and what we might do about that. So bring all of that next week for you to contemplate, and hopefully a decision on the 28th.
Okay, very good. Then we'll go to administrator updates. Interim Administrator Rogers, it's all yours.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. As you know, we've got many employees working from home, and I think they're settling in pretty well, getting their work done effectively from remote locations. And I just like to say what that means is business as usual, as much as possible, is continuing to go on. So permits are being processed through our e-permitting process for, projects and septic systems and things like that. The highway department has been doing maintenance work as requested and as needed. Certainly our public safety folks are all doing their work. Bills are being paid. We just kind of continue to move forward with this new reality. So the public support and patience for that is appreciated. In keeping with that also, we reopened the recycling center yesterday to a modified schedule of Monday and Thursday, trying to make sure that we've put some new processes in place that keep our staff there safe. So once recyclables are brought in, they can rest for a few days before they're processed and handled, giving the opportunity for the virus to die off, and potentially the virus, if it's on any materials, would be not there by the time it's processed. I just like to add, that's an ongoing conversation, and we're continually looking at it. We've started with Monday and Thursday. We could go to more days in the week. We just need to continue to evaluate how this is going to work. So we will have updates on our website and on our hub about that, and certainly on the radio as that happens. And last, as Auditor Powers mentioned, we're going to be bringing the short-term financials of the county next week to look at, so that we can understand the impact on our budgets. We're looking specifically at places where we could make budget cuts for the remainder of the year, or where there are savings already as a result of shutting down some buildings. So that will give us a better understanding of our position and the impact on our budget based on what our fund balance is. And at the same time, I'd like to also start a conversation with commissioners about goals for our 2021 budget process. We're actually getting close to when we would start that. And clearly, this is not going to be a normal budgeting year. So I'd like to have a good conversation about where people's heads are at with that, so that we can give direction to our department heads. And that's what I have for today. Unless anybody has questions. Unless anyone has questions for me.
Thanks for all your work during these challenging times, and we're very fortunate to have you with your dual role in MIT as well as our interim administrator. We're in good shape, so thank you for all the work on that. We'll go on to employee concerns, commissioner concerns. So I will go through a roll call again on any comments, questions, concerns that commissioners have, any meeting updates, and we do have one meeting to note that was in the agenda. I'll just state that now, that we have the Board of Appeals and Equalization on June 18th, if that's still possible. That's so, at 6 p.m. in the commissioner's room. So I will just do a roll call on any other comments or concerns that commissioners may have. And we'll start with Commissioner DeShaw.
I guess the only thing I got is I'd like to thank everybody in the county for supporting Kyler's family. It's a pretty rough time for them. Just like to remind everybody, if they are having problems, to make sure you call someone. It definitely could help. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for, yes, that's a big concern anytime, but more prevalent now, potential for problems. So, Commissioner Duker?
Yep, I have a couple of things. One, a big shout out to our Recycle Center crew for getting the recycling center back open and being available and continuing to help people and figure out how to operate the center. Also, a big shout out to Lori Erickson. If any of you are on social media, she has been hopping on occasionally since there are a lot of citizens who would like to help out. She has definitely been responding and letting people know what the correct way is to process donations, along with Grace. So that's nice for her to step into that role. And then we had two equipment operators down at the fire yesterday helping with demolition and pushing things down so that the firefighters could completely put out the fire. So thank you to our highway department for stepping up and coming out to do that. It's not part of their daily job, but as we know, everyone needs to come together in emergencies and do things to help each other out. And then to Commissioner DeShaw, thank you for coming in today. I cannot imagine the pain that you're going through since you just had a family tragedy not that long ago with your tribal leader. My heart goes out to you. I can't even imagine. And got your back, my friend. Over.
Thank you. I agree, certainly. Your comments there. Commissioner Mills?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Commissioner Mills, and I echo the words of Commissioner Dukirk and Commissioner DeShaw, and we're going through tough times, and then when it gets closer to home, it gets a lot harder, and that certainly was true this weekend and yesterday, and all that being said, I was in the Community Health Board meeting yesterday for Carleton County, St. Louis, Lake, and Cook County, and had check-ins from each county, and it's pretty alarming hearing about the struggles and challenges that St. Louis County is going through. I mean, they're much larger county, both geographically as well as population, of course, and finances, but they have a lot of, on that note, they have a lot more people at higher risk as well. And so just hearing about infections in assisted living facilities, very, very alarming, and it's scary because we need to be prepared for what when it comes here. But it also made me really appreciate our community and our staff at how on top of this and the response, how strong the response has been, and how well connected and organized everyone in our community is. And so I hope that as we go forward and things will get harder, that we maintain those relationships and we continue communicating and working together, and keeping our heads on straight and just sticking together. So that's all. Over.
Yes, thank you. I certainly agree with your comments. Thank you for expressing them. Commissioner Storley?
Thank you. Yes, Commissioner DeShaw, my thoughts are with you and the family. We are in very trying times, it seems, and we just need to know that we support each other. I will, this week and next week, start attending the township meetings via the phone, so that'll be something different too, but we're all adjustable and adaptable at this time, and I think we can all help each other to get through it. Thank you. Over.
Okay, thank you. Listen, and for my comments, I want to personally express my concern and condolences to Commissioner DeShaw and the family for their loss, and it's tough times. And so thoughts and prayers with you on that. Okay, we have an EDA packet included, and now we'll go to anniversaries. And Commissioner Dukirk, as always, thank you. Guess we're not signing cards, but we'll maybe do a virtual, whatever it is we can say, unless you got some more creative ideas. But I would like to call on you to recognize our anniversaries for county employees.
Actually, you know how much I love those cards. You can't make me stop during a pandemic. So Rena has them. Obviously, I don't want anyone to put their life in jeopardy. Maybe Rena could put your thoughts in the cards for you, and Bobby can sign them there. Moving on, we have Dan Berglund, 10 years at the Highway Department. Steve Butts, 25 years at the Highway Department. Curtis Laboda, 15 years at the Highway Department. Talk about a huge family over there and community and how you step up for one another. That is amazing. We have Kirk Oberg, 13 years in MIS. Bev Wolke, 15 years in the Auditor's Office. Lynn Wright, 6 years in Public Health and Human Service. And Joe Zoller, 16 years at the Sheriff's Department. And I did skip over one because we don't want this one just to sit in the middle there. Miss Dusty Nelms, thank you so much for 41 years in our Recorder's Office. I just so appreciate having you in there and your wonderful smile. So thank you to all of the employees. I can't wait to celebrate more anniversaries with all of you. Thank you. Over.
Thank you so much. Okay. Well, thanks, everyone. We had a very productive meeting, and I, again, appreciate your cooperation and dealing with these telephone conferences, and we're just working so well together, even though I know it's challenging and maybe more time-consuming, but we're getting our work done in the best interest of the county, so thank all of you for your role in that. So I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, do I have a second to that motion?
Support.
Okay, and so we'll meeting adjourned. Thank you. I'm sure everyone's for it. Have a good day, everyone.